Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. At the end of Surah Taha, in ayah number 132, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he says, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ, that he commands the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he orders him to command and order his family members to perform salah. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ, tell them to perform the salah. وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, and you yourself be extremely cautious, careful, punctual, regular about salah. لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا, we do not ask any sustenance from you. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ, rather we are the ones who sustain you. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى, and the good end and the final abode, the success in the life of the hereafter, لِلتَّقْوَى, is for the people who have piety, for the people who attain taqwa, people who have the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is a very, very profound ayah of the Quran, and this actually opens a topic to us. And that topic is how to educate our children about deen. Educating our own children about deen, about Islam, and how to go about teaching them deen. We get a structure for it from this ayah. First and foremost, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have to tell them, you have to teach them, you have to talk to them about it. This is the first thing. That just like we explain everything to our children, we teach them basic etiquettes, basic manners, how to eat, how to use the restroom, how to dress, how to wear clothes, how to do everything. And how we talk to them, we converse with them, we motivate them, we dialogue with them about other things that we also know are very important for them, such as their education, and who are they friends with, what are they doing, what did you eat today, what did you do today at school, what did you learn. Similarly, about the deen, we have to talk to them. We have to have a channel of communication. This is the first thing. We have to engage in religious discussions with our children. Read to them as an incident from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Share with them the basic meaning of a surah. Talk to them about the lives of the companions, radiallahu anhum. Discuss these things with them. Have these topics with them. One thing I've often said is that this is something that our scholars, they teach us, and was practiced for generations, and has been recommended by scholars for generations. And that is that just like we have family time, that we sit down and we eat food together as a family, and families, they all go to bed at the same time, lights out, and they go to the park together, and they go on vacations together. There's even TV time, they do it as a family. But where's the family time when it comes to religious knowledge and religious reflection? Do we have family time for that? It literally needs to be a part of a daily schedule of a family. There needs to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. As a minimum. The more the better. But a minimum of at least this much amount of time is dedicated to some religious talk, some religious reflection, some type of a religious conversation. This is how children begin to understand their religion. They begin to understand their deen. So that's the first thing we need to focus on. And it can be something very basic. Talk to them about a basic surah of the Quran. Talk to them about an incident from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Talk to them about the life of a companion, a story from the life of a great scholar, some type of a religious reflection. But have that dialogue, have that discussion. Get them to start pondering and thinking about these things themselves. You know, one of the greatest tragedies that we find in the Muslim community oftentimes is that religion becomes very ritual for people. And this is a huge problem that we see even with the older community. But the real crisis is that we are passing that same type of ritualistic religion onto our children. And that is something that we really need to be concerned about. If all we're passing on to our children is that, look, You just make wudu like this, and you just got to do a couple of rakats like this. Every Ramadan comes and you just fast for 29 or 30 days and you move on. If we teach ritualistic religion to our children, and that's what happens. When we don't teach them to think about it, to reflect on it, to live it, but rather it's just something they're expected to do when the time of it comes. We have to go to the masjid. Why? I don't want to. It's Ramadan, we have to go. Why? Because we have to do it. There's no thought, there's no reflection, there's no motivation, no inspiration, no connection. These are all different words that basically refer back to the iman. The iman is not strong. It's not cultivated. It's not motivating them. It's not pushing them. So this is the first thing. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ. Just like you tell them to go to sleep on time, go to work on time, work hard at school, finish their homework, clean up their room. Also tell them, remind them about salah. Be even more mindful of their salah than you are of all these other things. These are all important, but salah is the most important. It comes about Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Of course, the habit of Umar radiallahu anhu was remarkable. He used to in the first part of the night, first in the beginning of the night, he would perform some ibadah. He would get a little bit of rest. Then he would wake up, perform a little ibadah, and then go walking around the streets of Medina, patrolling the streets. And then he'd come back a little bit time before Fajr to engage in some more ibadah and worship, because that's the best time to engage in that qiyam al-layl, in that worship, in that reflection. So he would come back home at that time to engage in some ibadah, and he would first go to his family members, his children and his wife, and he would wake them up. And it comes in the narration, فَإِنْ أَبَوْا رَشَّ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ. If they would basically be extremely sleepy and they turn over and they wouldn't wake up, he would actually sprinkle some water on their face to wake them up. No, this is something we have to do. Just like you wouldn't compromise. I mean, people oftentimes, people tend to inappropriately introduce emotions in these areas. That we say, oh, but they're children, this isn't fard, and they should be able to sleep, and they should do this. If they want to do this, they will do it of their own accord. We have to teach our children. This is how you teach them. A simple question could be put. If it's time for school and they refuse to wake up, you drag them by one leg out of bed. Get to school now. I'll make you go to school in your pajamas. Why? Because this is important for them. And this child is kicking and screaming right now. But this is necessary for that child. And so you'll force him to do it because it's good for him. Salah is no different. We have to teach it to them. So this is the first thing. Command them to perform the salah. Tell them to, remind them. Be mindful of their salah. وَاسْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. And this is the next thing. This is very crucial, very critical, and very important for people to understand today. In our communities, this might be the most important lesson that we need to learn about raising our children upon the deen. وَاسْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. This word comes from sabr, which means to be patient. The literal meaning of the word sabr is to tie up something. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَاسْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. Become patient upon it. What this phrase means in the Arabic language, this is an idiom, a verbal idiom. What it means in the Arabic language, it means to be extremely punctual and dedicated and devoted to something. To stick with it, like we say. To stick with something. And وَاسْطَبِرْ, istibar, it has even more mubalagha in it. It has more emphasis in it. It means stick to it no matter what the cost. At no price, give it up yourself. So command your family to perform salah, and you yourself do not give up salah no matter what it takes. By any means necessary, you are regular about your salah. And this is a real important lesson. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting it like this, and He's emphasizing it like this. Because at the end of the day, telling our children, talking to them about it, all of this is great, and like I emphasize this, we need to be doing this. But all of this will only bear fruits, all of this will only be fruitful if I'm doing it myself. If I'm doing it myself. Our deen is a very honest deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a very keen sense of observance and honesty within the nature of the human being. If you tell somebody to do something and you're not doing it yourself, Allah has built it into the human nature. The first thing they'll say is, you're not doing it, why are you telling me to do it? This is built into human nature. To keep us honest, Allah has put this in us. And Allah challenges us. He tells us why. لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Why do you say that which you don't do yourself? كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. One of the things that angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most, one of the things that incurs the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most, is that when people tell others to do things, they do not do themselves. It's extremely angering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the thing. So this takes the discussion even further into this. Raising our children, teaching them deen. We need to be doing it ourselves. And this is especially crucial when our children are so young that they're not old enough yet where we can talk to them. We can dialogue with them. We can discuss these issues with them. This part of the ayah is extremely crucial at that point. Babies and small toddlers and infants, we need to be setting that example to them from before. This is something that I experienced myself. And I'm pretty sure everyone here has experienced. When your children begin to get older, they're not even 2 years old yet, but they become so keen. They start to develop such a keen sense of timing and your habits and your ritual that they know exactly when you go to work. They know when it's time for you to go to work. They can't even speak properly yet. They can't even take care of themselves yet. But they know, now it's time. This is the time when he goes to work. The father goes to work. And so what happens when you get to the door in order to leave for work, the child is already standing there crying, wanting to go with you. I mean, I experienced it even this week a couple of times. Because it's Ramadan, it's suhoor. So when we wake up in the morning, just naturally, my daughter, she wakes up at suhoor time. And so she knows that as soon as we get up off the table, after doing suhoor, she knows we start filing out of the house to go to the masjid. And so as soon as we got up off the table after eating suhoor, she started crying instantly. I said, what's wrong? Is she hungry? She needs to be changed? Something wrong? No. She was standing at the door crying because she knew we're all going to be going for Fajr right now. She wouldn't even allow to be taken into her room. My wife tried to even go near her and she screamed even louder. Because she knows you're not going to the masjid, he is. So that's it, they know. Now imagine this for a moment. If we were extremely punctual about our salah, and the mother, even if she's not going to the masjid, she's so punctual about her salah, and she's got the time fixed, not like how we casually perform salah. I'm working, doing all of my things, I get a 5-minute gap in between, I can make squeeze in salah real quick. No, a ritual. Just like we treat work, just like we treat our food, and our own things that are important to us, the way we treat them, make salah important to us. That's what we need to do. So if the time is fixed, think about how the children will develop a sense of this. They'll go and they'll stand at the place of salah even before you do. When it's time for salah, they go into the restroom wanting to stand at, they stand at the sink like it's time to make wudu now. And they start to do this. My daughter couldn't reach the sink, the faucet, so I saw we have a water cooler that's a bit lower. She goes and stands at the water cooler and starts to make wudu in the water cooler. They begin to do these things. They see you, they learn from it, they begin to emulate you. This is how we teach our children deen. This is how they learn everything from us. This is also how we teach them how to practice deen. We have to be solid ourselves. Allah says, for save yourself from the fire of hell and then save your families. Because when you begin to save yourself from the fire, you'll actually be capable of saving your family. You can't save your family if you can't save yourself. Just like in the airplane, what did they tell you? Nobody ever pays attention. When they're giving you the emergency, what to do if an emergency happens, nobody pays attention. But what do they tell you? They tell you something that's very interesting, very intuitive. They say that in case of an emergency, and there's a loss of cabin pressure, the masks, the oxygen masks will drop down. And what do they tell you to do? They say if you have a child or an elderly person, or a disabled person, somebody who needs your assistance. First put on your own mask, and then put theirs on. Because if you yourself are going to end up passing out due to a lack of oxygen, how are you going to help anybody else? So first make sure you get your oxygen, and then help the others. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here. This is the tarbiyah. Allah is teaching us how to raise our children. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا. We do not demand any rizq from you. Because oftentimes what gets in the way of me teaching my children deen properly? It's this rat race that we're all involved in. Making money, paying the bills, providing for our family. That's fine, we have to be responsible, we have to provide for them. But it's oftentimes the material pursuits is what gets in the way of us spending time with our children. Always realize this. Our children, if they wear the $10 shoes instead of the $100 shoes, they'll survive. But in order to go and make the money that we need to in order so we can buy them the $100 shoes, we'll be spending a lot less time with them. And that's something that can never be recuperated. We can't make up for that. No amount of money, no amount of possessions, luxury, nothing makes up for them. Time lost with our children. لا نسألك رزقا. Allah, don't worry about these things. Fulfill your responsibility, pay your bills, have a modest roof over your head, have something modest to live and to eat and to wear. But modest. What's our need? What's our requirement? Majority of the people today, they don't live in lavish palaces and wear expensive designer clothing, but yet they survive. They're okay. So this is something to think about. This is something that we all personally have to reflect on. What am I doing? Am I compromising time with my children and the upbringing of my children and the religious tarbiyah of my children just to make more money? And we say provide a better life for them, but what if the life they have is sufficient? These are things we have to think about. We have to honestly gauge ourselves. These are tough questions, bitter questions. They're hard to swallow, but we need to for the sake of our children. لا نسألك رزقا نحن نرزقك. Allah says, we're the ones who will feed you and sustain you. We'll take care of you. You just do your job. Fulfill your responsibility. Leave the rest to us. And then finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very appropriately and very eloquently and beautifully, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. And the good end, at the end of the day, the good, the success will be for the people of taqwa. God consciousness. Being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People that will be conscious, will commit, will be mindful of the way they live their lives, will basically weigh each and every single decision, each and every single choice that they make in life. They'll weigh it, they'll analyze it, they'll critique it, and they'll do the best that they can. The good at the end of the day will be for these people, and they will find a good result at the end of the day. And this also ties back into the children. When our children grow up, and when they begin to become adults, and they start to grow independent, and make their own decisions, and they're at that point where we can't tell them what to do anymore. That's an age that every parent fears. Every parent fears that age. Especially in today's world. It's a very scary time for parents. What are they going to do? What choices are they going to make? When they're out of our control. At that time, that person will find himself satisfied, fulfilled, and content with the way his children are living their own lives, even independently, is the one who lived his life by taqwa. The parents that put taqwa, they put Allah before everything else, when raising those children, they will find a good end result with their children. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to practice everything that was said and heard. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to raise our children properly. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen.